Welcome to Left, Right, Center, where we are covering Colorado politics. First on CBS News Colorado, I'm political specialist Shaun Boyd. Super Tuesday is just days away, and Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley is on a whirlwind tour of states holding primaries, including Colorado. Haley rallied in Centennial this past week, telling supporters Donald Trump will not only lose in November, he will drag Republican candidates down with him. I had a chance to interview the former UN ambassador, who told me Colorado is an example of how much Trump has cost the GOP, saying the party has shrunk here by 10% since he became president. Joining me, our analysts, Republican Dick Wadhams, Democrat Mike Dino. So, Dick, let's start with you. You were at this rally. Yeah. So, Haley have any chance of winning Colorado?
You know, Shaun, the turnout of unaffiliated voters is pretty impressive, I think. Checking the numbers this morning, I think she's got a shot to be in the 40s. I don't think she can win, but that would be a moral victory for her to get into the 40s, and I think she can.
Especially if she can in other states,
That's
too.
Right.
You know, Minnesota, states like that, right?
In fact, she has, and I think it's showing a real soft underbelly of the Trump candidacy.
So, Mike, you know, it's interesting. People don't want, most Americans, they don't want Trump or Biden, and yet here we are. Why? And do you think that's going to affect voter turnout come November?
Well, I think it could dampen voter turnout. Certainly, you know, the geopolitical issues that are out there have already affected certainly the Democratic Party, as we saw in Michigan with the uncommitted getting 2 delegates. So it's, you know, younger people, I talked to my son last night, and, you know, I told him who was on the ballot here, and he had some other choices. But he's a registered Democrat. But nonetheless, I think it will affect different generations and how they view this election, and could dampen turnout.
Yeah. Well, as of this taping, the U.S. Supreme Court has still not issued a ruling on whether Trump can be on Colorado's ballot under the 14th Amendment, which bars insurrectionists from holding office. If it decides in favor of plaintiffs, any votes for Trump would not count. Meanwhile, Colorado Congressman Ken Buck has introduced a resolution invoking the 25th Amendment to remove President Biden from office. That after the Justice Department's special counsel, Robert Hur, released a report finding Biden willfully kept top-secret documents at his house dating back to 2017. But Hur decided against charges, citing Biden's poor memory. You know, Mike, Buck's resolution isn't going anywhere, but how damaging is this to Biden?
Well, he got a clean bill of health this week. You know, his physician said he's fit to serve, and I think, you know, some people can take some stock in that. But, you know, the age issue is going to remain there throughout the election. People are going to bring it up on both sides. It affects the president more so than his challenger. And I just hope that the economy supersedes, you know, everybody, you know, as the top issue when it comes down to it. And I think that is going to be the issue when people ultimately decide to vote.
Right. As Mike mentioned, Dick, Trump, you know, has had some same memory issues too, and Haley has called for mental competency tests for presidents. What do you think?
You know, I think there's going to be a move to that. Not this election, obviously, but I think that given the situation with both Biden and Trump, that I think we're going to see more of that later on. I think that report, her report, was very damaging to Biden because the language was so explicit. And but I agree. I think Trump is not the person he was 8 years ago or even 4 years ago.
Who is when you get to be that age, right? Right. So turning to the state capitol, where a bill regarding the state's pension plan became a proxy for the debate over the Israel-Hamas war. The measure by Representative Elizabeth Epps would have repealed a 2016 law that barred investment in companies that economically boycott Israel. More than 100 people signed up to testify on the bill that ultimately failed. So, you know, Dick, this war is already impacting the presidential primary. And a group in Michigan, in fact, you know, had on the ballot, you know, basically none of the above, right? And over 100,000 people picked that. So how do you see this impacting the election come November?
Well, just today or yesterday, a group of Palestinian supporters announced they want Democrats to vote uncommitted here in Colorado. They waited a little while to get that out there. Somebody didn't tell them the ballots went out 2 weeks ago. But I think there is increasing turmoil in the Democratic Party over this issue, Shaun, and it's not going to go away. The pro-Palestinian crowd, they are very intense, and they're not going to go away. And it could hurt Biden, in addition to Michigan and other states here, right here in Colorado.
Yeah, Mike, I think we've talked about this, that Democrats especially are divided over this war. What impact do you see it having on primaries, not just the general election, too?
Well, it has an impact right now. We've seen it. The president is working really hard to get a ceasefire. And, there were rumors that we'd have an announcement of one. It didn't come. But I'm hopeful. I think we will see one before the general. But, you spoke about the primaries, and probably not before then. But definitely by the general, maybe, and I'd like to see the Israel-Hamas-Gaza issue off the table.
I bet you would.
And then talk about the economy.
We'll have much more in just a few minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back to Left, Right, Center. Also at the state capitol this week, moms and students turned out in force to lobby for a package of gun control bills, including a ban on assault-style weapons, more limits on where Coloradans with concealed carry permits can go, including public parks and college campuses, and a measure that would allow only security guards, not teachers, to be armed in schools. So, Mike, do you see them passing?
I think they have a good chance. Again, over in the House, we know it's a veto-proof majority, and so there's a lot of Democrats, and the Senate is just one shy of a veto-proof. So, bottom line, the numbers are there for the Democrats. The Democrats to do it if they have the will. It'll be contentious. It always is. You can go back historically, and it's never easy to debate these issues, and there's a lot of amendments usually that are offered, and so. But I think. Their chances are good if, being debated at this point. If you wait till the end of the legislature, the timing will be off.
Right. Dick, these bills make the 2013 gun control bills, where we had hundreds and hundreds of people coming down to the Capitol testify, make those look tame by comparison. Is this a sign, do you think, of just how progressive the state has become? Well,
it's certainly a sign how progressive the Democratic Party has become. I still believe the state is going to resist these, and it essentially outlaws concealed carry. When you really get down to it, it's so expansive. But Shaun, the other thing about this, these are feel-good bills. None of these bills would have done anything to prevent the horrible massacres we've had in Colorado over the last 20 years. Not one of them. It wouldn't have prevented Columbine. It wouldn't have prevented the horrible thing in Douglas County, the Aurora Theater. Not one of these bills would have done. And that's what I think is so perplexing by voters, is we're passing all these feel-good bills, but it really doesn't do anything to prevent them from happening.
We'll see. Finally, Colorado's Medicaid program is such a mess. Some families are suing the state. They say people with disabilities who have been on Medicaid for years are suddenly being kicked off as the state redetermines eligibility after taking a break during COVID. And that's just the beginning. Some of the state's most severely disabled children are also seeing claims denied by a private agency the state contracted with, and some providers are dropping those who can't pay out of pocket. So, Mike, what is going on?
Well, two things have happened here. During the pandemic, more people were eligible. There was more money to go around, and of course, eligibility was not as enforced because it was the pandemic. That's gone away. Money's gone away. Eligibility's become tighter. And the second thing is the state is revamping its system at the same time. So it's a double whammy to people who are very vulnerable. Folks with disabilities, families with disabilities. I mean, they live on a very marginal income. And so the state's really got to figure this out quickly.
Yeah, I think some of these claims are being denied. It takes 6 months or more for them to then go back through, and in the meantime, there are limited providers, and they're losing the providers that they've got. I feel for these families, really, and so I say, where's the accountability?
Well, and I think Medicaid is probably the most important social program we have at state government. I really do, because as Mike pointed out, the most vulnerable people are affected by Medicaid. But Shaun, I was telling Mike before the show, I remember when I worked for Governor Owens all those many years ago, Medicaid is always a problem for every governor. I mean, there's something about the program that just invites constant turmoil, it seems to me. And I don't know why that is. And it's unfortunate because the people who were most affected by Medicaid are the ones who are the losers when this happens.
Yeah, and they're some of the most vulnerable that we've got in the entire state.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for this installment of Left, Right, Center. We will see you next week. And Super Tuesday, we will have full coverage, so join us.